joining us.
No, thank you for having me. What an honour to be down at Cranbourne for our little podcast. I love it.
How was your trip down?
It was excellent. Is that what I'm meant to say?
Yeah, sure.
Look, the drive from I like being in the car. I've done a lot of long travelling, so it wasn't that bad. You've got your coffee, you've got time to think.
Yeah. Are you podcasts, music?
A little bit of both, sometimes silence. It just depends, what's going through my mind at that point in time, where my focus point needs to be. So it could be anything.
Very good.
Yeah.
And how's your week? What's on for the week?
Busy week, like always. The sales agents over at Chelt do keep me quite busy. So we've got a couple of training pieces to work on for our Friday Wolf Pack. We've had our performance meetings, the pinch coming down to Finia. So everyone's sort of like trying to get everything over the line.
Yep.
There's a little bit of it's exciting because we know we've got end of Finia coming up, awards. It's an exciting time of the year. So naturally, I think it feels quite busy.
Yeah.
And then we've got our lovely Mickey, I think it's her last week with us. So we've got a little bit of a farewell lunch for her. So there's a little bit of movement this week.
Good. Yeah, lots of activity.
Yeah, Cheltenham, there is always some activity happening during the week. There's never a point where you sit down and you think, wow, what am I going to do now? I've got a spare hour. It just never happens.
Yeah. And there's been lots of movement in the team over the last couple of months as well. So we are looking at recruiting.
Yep.
Tell me what that looks like, your strategies around recruitment.
So we are in full growth mode, and I think that is our plan moving forward for the foreseeable future. We want to grow, and so the idea is to make sure our lead agents find out what their goals are, and then we work out a roadmap of how to get there, and obviously that's by way of team. So we want to make sure that we can find the right team members to make the whole team excel, if that makes sense. So we're always in growth mode, and that's not just associates joining into a team. It's, we encourage standalone agents to come across. We've got the platforms, we've got the coaching, we've got the systems, the processes in place for them to exceed. So we are actively looking for standalone agents to join the team as well. So basically we just want to grow. So recruitment does form a big percentage of our role. If you're a director, if you're a sales manager, it does still form a really good part of your role. And at the end of the day, you're just speaking to people. Yeah. It's a slow burn, but you're just speaking to people and building those relationships. And in turn, sometimes, they get contemplative and they ask you out for that coffee, and then you've got a really good recruit on your hands.
Yeah. When you are interviewing, what are you looking for? What do you look for in an individual?
For me, you can rip up the resume. Like, I'm not a resume kind of person. What's on paper, it's basically two lies in a room. And you've heard that term before.
Yeah.
So for me, it's, do they give me a funny feeling, like a good feeling? Is their energy on par with my energy? Are we vibing around the same frequency? Because that part's hard to lie about.
Yeah.
So if you can find a person with the right attitude and they want to be within the team for the right reasons, then that's what I look for, because everything else can be trained. I can't train an attitude, and I can't train out a bad attitude. So that's what I look for. It's that initial feel. It's almost like going on a date. It's like,
Yeah. And first impressions count, right?
Yeah, I would have a drink with him.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so they give you that initial feeling. So that's what I'm kind of looking for. Like, what are they, the way that they talk, how quickly they talk, why? Like, why do you want to join real estate? And my best recruits, hand on heart, have been the ones that are coming from hardship. I want to change my life.
Yeah.
I love those candidates.
Yeah.
Because they will work hard to turn their lives around.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay, I want to go back. You're originally from Geelong, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I've got a whole heap of family in Geelong. Whereabouts did you grow up?
So on the Bellarines.
Yeah.
So we had a holiday. Well, originally my parents flipped homes in Melbourne. So back when I was a kid. So I think we moved from the northern suburbs when I was about 12. And my parents would buy a house, whether it be Coburg, Preston, Bundoora, wherever. Every year we went to about five different primary schools. And then come high school time for me, so I was about 12, my mum and dad were like, nah, we'll flip the last home and we're going to move to our holiday home, which was in St. Leonard's. And so they made the big move and they have not moved since. And so we moved there in 2000. And then I started high school in Drysdale. So been there pretty much the last 5 years I've been back and forth in Melbourne between my companies in Geelong, but predominantly in and around Geelong. I have come back and forth to Melbourne throughout my time, but always seem to have ended up back in Geelong. But that's because I've had companies down there of, there's always something bringing me back down there.
Yeah. Did you know John's family holiday every year for the last 30 years at St Leonard's?
So does everyone else from corporate at Ray White. Like, everyone's got a holiday home in St Leonard's. And that's the great thing, because I opened up an office on the Ballerine.
Yeah.
And so St Leonard's was obviously one of my main areas, and my previous company was Bright Pink. Mm-hmm. So we were really rogue on our marketing. And so when I had come over to Ray White, Dom had mentioned, hey, our holiday down there. And I remember seeing these outrageous huge pink boards. And that's how I kind of knew you. It's almost like I know you already, because we drive down and we see the pink boards all the time. Like, your marketing was so bold. Yeah. And so I do find it is a very, very common holiday destination. Growing up as kids, we hated it because we were one full-time resident in the street, and across the road, a deacon lecturer, she was in her 70s, was the other permanent resident. Everyone else in the street would come and go for holidays. Yeah. It was like a ghost town, tumbleweeds. Yeah, yeah. So as kids, we just had to occupy us. We didn't really have friends down there, so we were hating our parents for pulling us down. Yeah. But in hindsight, it was a good way to grow up.
Yeah, yeah. So you've just got a brother?
A brother, and I've got an older sister. So I've got a sister who's almost 50. She'll kill me for saying that. So she's 12 years older. Yeah. I'm in the middle, and then my brother's 4 years younger.
Okay, yeah. And what was your childhood like?
Chaotic.
Yeah.
We were a very, very chaotic, I suppose, not dysfunctional family, but we had, parents weren't as lenient. You had to behave as a child or you got a smack. Yeah. So we grew up with a lot of screaming and yelling. Yeah. But I wouldn't change it. Yeah. So our parents instilled in us really good values, which I think the little ears of today probably need a little bit more of. We wouldn't double cross our parents, because it was a fierce game of who was gonna get each other first. So we picked our battles, my brother and I. Yeah. But it was fun.
So flipping homes, your parents flipping property. Yep. Do you think that's where your love for property came from?
Maybe it was something in the back of my mind. Mm-hmm. Back then, it was a bit of a drag that they'd buy these dilapidated, worst house in the best street kind of scenario every time. Dad has fallen through a number of bathroom floors. We'd have to share rooms till things were renovated. So for us, it was just again. But I suppose for me, I really, really wanted to be a lawyer. But my parents were like, well, you need to pay for that. You need to find the accommodation. You need to have a job, but also do the full-time course. We're not going to assist. If that's what you want to do, we'll support you, but we're not going to support you financially. So for us, it was like, how do I do it? Because I have to pay for accommodation. It's probably going to be a university in Melbourne. But then I started work when I was about 13. So I worked all the way through year 12. I didn't even give myself a chance to properly study and get that enter score that I needed to get into a university. So I really didn't set myself up for what I wanted to do. And so when that failed, I got my enter in year 12. I'm like, Jesus, I really stuffed this up. Public relations was the only thing that I could jump into. Yeah. And I just thought to myself, I'm like, nah. I'm like, what can I do that doesn't require a 7-year university degree that's going to make me $1 million? There's got to be something. My parents are very entrepreneurial. I've never known them to work, only flip homes. I think they were both retired. My mum was probably in her mid-30s and my dad was probably 40.
Amazing.
So I've never known them to otherwise work. They basically flipped homes, and that's what they did. They've only ever dealt in cash. They've never had mortgages. They've never had credit cards, anything like that. So I do adopt a little bit of that from my parents. But for me, it was the urge to win and to shortcut the win. How am I going to get paid the same as a lawyer or a doctor, but I don't want to put the study in because I don't have the time. I'm going to have to sit... I'm going to have to sit my degree, and then I'm going to have to get accepted. And then when I get accepted, I'm still starting at the bottom. I said, by the time I become a QC or a barrister, I'm going to be 60. I'm like, this doesn't work for me. I want to step out of my Ferrari when I'm 30. Yeah. How do I do it? Yeah. And then someone mentioned real estate to me. At the time, I was managing La Paqueta in Geelong, where I worked with the Kevin Choxy. So we've got some really fun stories from that time. Yeah. He went into real estate with Ray White down in Lara. Yeah. And I went into real estate with Barry Plant at the time. And I was their first ever PA. They've never ever had one. and they trialled their first PA. They had 3 offices at the time for South Barwon, and I was their trial guinea pig, and it worked. I started with Nathan Ashton at the time, who was a lead agent, and it kicked off. But then I decided to go to Europe and live there for a little bit and did real estate over there.
Okay.
So I was in the leasing department in Malta,
Wow.
managed a couple of wine bars in London, lived in Spain for a little bit, then randomly came back with the intention to go back and live there because it was just awesome lifestyle.
Absolutely.
Like, everyone works hard, but they party every day of the week. They are the happiest people. It was so much fun. I never made it back there. I ended up opening up a restaurant instead. And I think I was like 20 at the time that all of this was happening, 21 maybe.
Yeah.
So opened up a huge 100-seat Spanish restaurant, which we took all the business partner and I took all the recipes from, or all the activities and all the research we'd done when we lived in Spain, brought that across to the restaurant and tried to make it as Spanish and as authentic as possible. And so for that middle bit, I was in hospo.
Yeah. So you've dipped in and out of real estate.
Yeah, so I started with Barry Plant, then went to do real estate overseas. Well, didn't go overseas to do real estate. I fell into it. Mm-hmm. Who picks real estate as a working holiday? Like, I'm mental, right? I'm crazy. It's just not what you do. I remember the first day lying on the bathroom floor on the cold tiles being like, I have to read in a different language. I have to speak in a different language. Why did I put this pressure on myself? I'm on a holiday. So I'm like, no, I've got to see it through. I've got to see it through. And it was so much fun.
I can't believe that. Is incredible. I did not know that about you.
Yeah. So I kind of did the hospitality thing, and then I went and worked for Flight Centre. So I had to I sold out of that business and had to lay low for a little bit.
Yeah.
Just to fix up a few things with the closing down trusts and just winding down.
Yeah.
So then I went to work for Flight Centre in Geelong, and then I transferred over to Flight Centre in Hawthorn, and I was there for quite some time. And then when I decided to come back to Geelong, I reached out to a couple of agents that I did know, and then I ended up with Hayes Winkle, where I spent the next 10 years of my life, which was a really long chapter of my life.
So tell me about Hayes Winkle.
Look, it was very rogue. I knew Danny and Michelle from previously, always good friends with them. There's options to go to Buxton, there was options to go back in with Barry Plant, but I thought, no, this seems like something different. Love their pink marketing. So I was Danny's PA for I think 4 years, and then we had a meeting and they basically had a set of keys in their hand. This was December of 2015, I want to say, I think now, 2015. They're like, look, we've got a premise on the Bellarine. You've got 24 hours to decide if you're going to remain a PA, which we're actually not going to give you the option for, or you have to become a director, where we cut your pay, you become commission only instantly, and you've got to open and run an office.
Oh my God.
And I'm like, okay, you mean like January, like next year? And I remember Michelle laughing. She's like, no, dude, it's January in like next month.
Yeah.
And I'm like, you crazy? I'm a PA. They're like, you need to make it happen. And they were very much, which taught me a lot. They would give me these tasks and like, we don't care. We don't want to hear from you. Make it happen. Make it happen. Make it happen. I almost feel like the chick out of Devil Wears Prada. And she's like, go and get me the unpublished Harry Potter book. And she's like, just make it happen. Yeah. She's like, how do I get that book? That was my life with Danny and Michelle, particularly Danny.
Well, they obviously knew you could do it.
She's like, make it happen. And I was like, what do you mean make it happen? Like, I'm not a magician. Don't want to hear from you. Make it happen.
But you did.
I did. And so I had to work out how to open up a real estate office. And it was the size of like half the size of a single garage. It was tiny. This office was like a little box.
Yeah.
But that's where our fourth office was born. And that was my office on the Bellarine.
And what did you learn during that time?
So much. So much. It was so hard not to want to throw the towel in when the pressure just got to the point of like, I'm not a quitter and I don't like failing. So it's almost like if I took that easy road, how many people would I be letting down? Like it can't be an option. And it's almost like this mode you morph into, and I've spoken about it before. You'll never truly understand it till you go through it, but you do morph into an animal mode where for me to have bought into that business and for me to have done that venture, I basically put everything on the line. I rang all of the banks and I said, stop harassing me at 9 at night. I said, I can't pay you, but I promise I will pay you. I've done a business venture. Can you please just work out the interest side of it? Don't call me. And I promise when I've got the money, I'll pay you. I basically went into a negative for everything.
Oh my God.
I had so much debt. It was insane. But it was like, am I going to let it stress me out? Or am I just going to put it to the side and no, I'm going to catch up? What's the worst that's going to happen?
Yeah.
My partner at the time was an apprentice, so he just made enough to cover the mortgage of the house.
Yeah.
I was basically taking my piggy banks to get them put into notes so I wouldn't look like an idiot at the supermarket paying in bags of 10-cent coins to buy dog food for my dogs and food for us and petrol. Like, that's how crucial it was. And I'm like, I need money, because they'd cut my salary. And it was like a 35% comm split. And that is what I lived off for the next 6 years.
Oh, my gosh.
So, and we had to build a rent roll. And they were like, look, it's a small office. We ran lean and mean. We didn't have the backing of a corporate company like, say, Ray White. We just had our own shareholders' money that we were building these offices out of. So we couldn't afford to buy rent rolls. We couldn't afford fancy fit outs. Like, I fit 2 offices out for them and paid for those fit outs. Which I was happy to do because I was so invested. But we had to grow the rent roll. I was the receptionist. I was the main sales agent. And I was there for a period of time by myself till we could afford to put team on. And so I was getting up at 5 a.m. in winter, putting on snow boots because I just wet through all of my runners. And I couldn't afford to keep buying runners. So I'd be up at 5 a.m. with snow boots to do letterbox drops so that I could be back in the office to be the receptionist at 9 and then work my day around opening and closing the office for appraisals. And then eventually I got a few listings and we put a few team on. And then that's how it started.
So at this point you start to get your head above the water?
It just didn't seem like it was ever going to happen. Well, if you think about, you've got to be on reception, you've got a prospect, right? You've got to list property, because if you list property, you've got something to sell, and then that's how you make commission. I was comm only, but then I also had to grow a rent roll because I didn't have a PM. I'm not a property manager, so I didn't know the ins and outs of that role, both demanding roles. So I was trying to give it my all. I'm trying to think, I was about 28 at the time, and it was like I'm trying to make this work. You know, learning legislation, how to set up key registers, trust accounting, how to set up all of your, compliance with consumer affairs. It wasn't easy, but we somehow pushed through. And then I found another big premise that was on the main street, a really great location that had just been gutted by the previous tenant. And I said to Danny, let's take it on. And this place was huge. So it was like the size of like a 3-bedroom home. It would have been at least, 13 or 14 squares.
Yeah.
And he's like, that's fine, but we just don't have the funds to fit it out. So I'm like, okay, cool. I'll just see what we can do. So my partner at the time was a builder, apprentice builder. They were working tirelessly at nights to fit out this massive real estate office. So for 40 grand, we fitted out and it looked amazing.
Oh my gosh.
And then we started to trade from there, and we ended up being Janet, Michaela and I, 3 girls. Michaela started off as my PA, then ended up on the sales team. We had a receptionist / property manager. Then after about 3 years, we got a receptionist and then a separate PM. So the team kind of grew, hovered around 5 in the team. And we ended up writing about 1.2 million between the 3 gals. So,
wow.
Yeah, it ended up happening, and we ended up being good competition for the 5 officers around us who thought, like, they'd pull my flyers out of the letterbox and think, you got to do better than this. Like, what are you doing? Like, what is this? You're never going to win like this. And I'm like, I am going to win. Just leave me alone. So they were very, very savage. They'd been there since I was in diapers. These agents were, 50s, 60s, 70s. They knew the entire town. Their kids went to, school and events with pretty much everyone in the area. So I'm like, how do I break into a market where everyone already knows everyone? It's rural and it's cliquey. It's like, how am I going to break in amongst the OGs that have been here in their same office for 30 years? Like, how do we make this happen? They're all laughing at me. We're bright pink. We wear bright pink high heels. We're a team of girls. We're a bit of a laughing stock. But we gave them a run for their money and ended up taking a whole heap of market share.
Yeah, that's incredible. It just sounds like persistence and relentlessness was key.
Well, when you don't have a plan B, nothing can attack your plan A. You just have to make it work. But when you're in a position of, I've got no money, like, I'm going down pretty quick, I need to make this work. So I think a lot of people, I suppose, they have a bit of an easier road. They'll never really experience what that's like, but you kind of have to go through that transition to become an animal. And then when you're an animal, you're in full hunt mode. I did whatever it took to get a listing. I would gut the opposition, and I loved it so much that it became a really obsessive sport.
Savage.
Utterly.
Yeah.
And then I taught the others to be savage, and then we were like, that's it. And my main competitor were men in their 50s and 60s that were like, you're in pink high heels. Like, go play.
Yeah.
Like, this is our domain. And I'm like, I'll show you. And started to gut them.
Yeah.
And pink boards just went up. And it was the best feeling. Our team was so invested. They'd been with me from day dot. And together, well, we were together for about 5 years or so for my little office. And we really loved it. It was a little family for Michaela, Janet and I. We absolutely loved it. And then my niece came on board. And then we had Steph come on board and a few others. And it was just a really good time.
Yeah. So when did Ray White come on your radar?
So the driving back and forth from St Kilda, Brighton East, and then Hyatt to Geelong, it just became too much. And I started to question, okay, I'm never going to get this time back. Surely there is something for me closer to home. And the last office, I suppose, tipped us over the edge. So I opened up our 6th office in Armstrong Creek near Torquay. Mm-hmm. I saw a real good opportunity, growth corridor, and I'm like, let's do it. My partner, Lee, I said, you want to be a director? Leave Buxton. Come and do this for 12 months so you've got a bit of experience. It'd be great to have on your resume. Like, let's do it. Bought a house like 5 minutes away from the office so we could have 2 locations. And we set up another office. He did really well in his first year, but it was tough. I had my office to look after, obviously helping out his office. And then over that summer, we sort of sat down. He's like, is it worth it? And I'm like, what do you mean? He's like, well, where's home? I said, Bayside. He's like, well, then why are we doing this? Mm. You know, you'd get back to Brighton and it's like, hang on, where's my dress? Oh, crap, I forgot it at Armstrong Creek. I remember him driving back at 2 a.m. to go and get his iPad because he didn't want to do it in the morning, but he'd forgotten his iPad. We were in Brighton, he forgot his iPad at Armstrong Creek. And like, you can't be doing this. Like, this was not great. So we realised from a lifestyle point of view that there was something else better out there. We didn't know what it was, but something had to change because it wasn't great for the relationship. It wasn't great for us. And you know, you can't be a proper agent if you're not in your area for majority of the time. Mm. So I started to sort of wean off a little bit because of the driving. And I had my team pick up the work, cut them in for whatever. But it's like I don't even feel like I'm doing my job anymore. Like a real estate agent, I'm not really even down in the area. If I don't have to be, I'll stay at home. So, yeah, that summer we made a change and we resigned.
And who was the first person you connected with Ray White Group?
So Chanel from Titanium is an old friend of mine from back in the day, also in Geelong. Yeah. And I reached out to her in pure fear. I hadn't resigned yet. I'm like, I don't know what to do, Chanel. I don't know if, like, I haven't had a resume in 10 years. Like, do I stand a chance? Like, what do I do? She's like, just resign. Mm. She actually held my hand. She's like, babe, just resign. Yeah. She goes, we've got this. Yeah. And I remember meeting with her and Jeremy, and they gave me so much hope and courage because I didn't know what to do. Like, I'd never had... 10 years is a long time to not even have your head in this sort of career move, or I just didn't know what to do or where to go. Mm. Obviously, partner working at Buxton, Lee went back to Buxton. I'm like, do I go there? Do I want my own thing? Like, what do I actually even want to do? Because I didn't want to list and sell when I came down here. I'm like, no way. It's too heartbreaking. I did it for 10 years, hashed out a full market, grew market share. I did that. I know it like the back of my hand on the ballerina. So I just... You know, I'm 34 now. Like, I don't want to have to do it again. Mm. Like, I just rather... I know I was a director of a couple of offices and ran rent rolls and had a holiday letting business. I said, but it's not about status for me. It's just I'm happy to be someone's EA or PA. Like, I'm happy with that. And when I spoke to Chanel, she's like, nah, there's more in it. Like, I've got the perfect people for you. And that's how she put me in touch with Ray White.
Yeah, incredible.
And so meeting Mark and Kyle were my first points.
Okay, and what's that journey been like since you joined the team?
I never looked back. Mm-hmm. I like Geelong, but I really don't go down unless I have to. Mm. So I still got family there, never looked back. And it's funny how things change in that year that we've gone. And it's sort of like you find, you don't think of it at the time, but you see what impact you did make and what legacy you have left because things have been so different between their company and what it is now. And I just think coming across has been the best thing. Yeah. Like when you don't look back and you don't second guess yourself and you don't start looking elsewhere, you know it's been the right move. Mm-hmm. And the culture is so incredibly different. Mm-hmm. I've gone from Sparta like 300 being that's how we trained our agents. Like, you're either going to make it or you're not. We're not going to even help you. You've got to make this for yourself. The training was incredibly harsh. And then you come over here and you've got programs and you've got platforms and you've got corporate and you've got a sales manager and everything's so like nice and easy and we want you to succeed. It was a bit of a culture shock.
Yeah. I remember when Kyle first told me that you were coming on board, he said, Mars, you are going to love Grace. And I do.
Oh, there you go. I'm a bit of a rough diamond, I suppose, because I don't know any better than what I know for the last 10 years. And so coming across here has been a huge transition. And, you know, the Cheltenham team is huge. So I don't come from a huge team. We did have 6 offices and I predominantly ran a lot of the training and assisting with all the team. But even putting everyone in those 6 offices together, Cheltenham's still bigger. So it was a little bit overwhelming, and it's that whole, God, am I going to fit in? It's like going to high school or a new school for the first time. It's like, am I going to be liked? Am I going to fit in? And then when you're in a position of leadership, it's like, okay, I've got to jump straight into this and I have to forge instant relationships. Like, that was a task in itself. So I'm glad you liked me, Mars.
And what have you learned since joining the team?
So much. I suppose the biggest learning curve is everyone is different, and how you get that one message across, you need to be the master of getting that across in several different languages, because people will learn differently and people will be receptive to messages differently and they'll understand differently. So it's almost like being the ultimate chameleon. Building trust is super important. Consistency is super important.
Yeah.
So learning, I suppose, to manage many personalities and a lot of ego has been huge learning.
Yeah. What are your plans for the future? What does the next financial year look like?
Like I said, Cheltenham is this machine that is slowly getting built and built and built. So we are nowhere near that finish line. It's exciting to think about what we achieved this year, because when we set those original goals, it was like, no way. Like, we're not going to make it. We smashed it.
Yeah.
And now I did a little bit of forecasting last night and a bit of goal setting with the team, looking at what the next fin year's goals are is just scary. Yeah. These figures are crazy. Like, you just don't, for one office to pump out those kinds of figures, you can't help but be excited.
It's extraordinary.
It is.
Yeah.
But then that comes down to having the right team. So we're, I guess, going as fast as we can. I don't think we're worrying about too much. We're just going. And we will assess whatever comes along the way.
Yeah.
And the growth mode as well. Like, when I started, my team grew within a month or 2. And then we ended up getting huge within 6 months. It was just a whole different team. So that quite possibly could happen again in the near future. We could add more to the team, which is what we want to do, which changes Cheltenham again.
Bali was a little carrot. What are the goals like? Are we on track?
Bali's ambitious. I think it was strategically ambitious. I think if we could all get to Bali, that would be great. I think Mark and Carla are probably worried that a few of us won't come back. Putting us all together in a lovely haven like that. It's an $8.5 million target. We do have a calendar year to achieve it. Yep. So we're kind of only halfway through that now. It is really ambitious. So we're still tracking, but at this point, I don't know if it's going to be something that we end up making or falling short. We're going to have to wait and see.
Time will tell.
Yep.
Yeah.
But it's nice to have those incentives.
Absolutely. It's nice to have a goal, something to work towards.
Definitely.
And what do you like to do for fun?
I'm so boring. Fun. I love Pilates, so really, really love Pilates. I've got a gorgeous doggy, Indy, so I love spending time with her. So finding new parks, going out for walks, runs. I love to cook. What else? I just like to be out in nature. I love markets. Yeah. I love getting out of my suit and then putting something comfy on and just spending the day outside. Yeah. Being with friends and family. Heading back to Geelong whenever time permits. But other than that, there's not much else. Well, there's not many hobbies you can have in the time that we've got between work and home life. So it's just enjoying, I think, the simple things which we struggle to slow down and switch off. Yeah. When you've got the opportunity to do that, I think you value it so much more.
Oh, absolutely. What do you like to cook?
Oh, anything. Like lasagna, chicken schnitzels, love doing desserts.
Yeah.
Love pulling out a new cookbook and trying something different that I don't often cook at home. There's something satisfying about being able to produce something lovely on a plate, and obviously having restaurants and being heavily involved in coffee and roasting and competitions and that sort of thing. I just love that whole element of food, wine, coffee. So it's nice to kind of delve a little bit into that when I can.
Yeah, perfect. Well, thank you so much for joining
No
us.
worries. Thank you so much for having me. It's
Thanks
been
for
great.
tracking down to Cranbourne.
It's been a pleasure. Thanks, Mars.
Thanks.